The gunshot came so close that Kong Dae-suk felt the heat of it before he felt the pain. Glass exploded across the back seat as the bullet tore through the car door, ripping into his side with a force that knocked the breath out of him. The vehicle swerved violently, tires screaming against wet asphalt as the driver shouted something Kong couldn't hear anymore. Another shot. Then another. Kang's hand went instinctively to his waist, fingers closing around cold metal, but his vision blurred before he could raise the gun. Blood soaked into his tailored suit, warm and fast, pooling beneath him. "Chairman!" one of his men yelled from the front seat. The world tilted. Kong clenched his jaw and forced himself upright. "Don't stop," he said, though his voice came out rough, barely louder than a whisper. "Drive." The car burst through traffic, horns blaring, rain hammering down as Soul blurred past in streaks of red and white. Kong pressed his palm hard against the wound, feeling slick blood slide between his fingers. He had been ambushed before, many times. But this one was different. Too close. Too precise. Too confident. By the time the car screeched into the emergency entrance of Wyong Medical Center, Kang's breathing was shallow, uneven. His men were already spilling out, guns drawn, shouting at stunned security guards. "Clear the entrance. Everyone back." The doors slammed open, and bright hospital lights stabbed into Kang's eyes. The smell of disinfectant hit him next. Sharp, sterile, wrong. Hospitals. His jaw tightened. Hands tried to lift him from the car, but Kong shoved them away and staggered forward on his own, boots leaving dark red prints on the white floor. A doctor rushed toward him. "Sir, you've been shot." "Don't touch me," Kong snapped. The doctor froze. Monitors beeped somewhere nearby. Nurses stared. Patients were hurried away as Kang's men sealed off the corridor with practiced efficiency. Another doctor stepped forward, older, calmer. "Chairman Kong, you're losing blood rapidly. We need to examine the wound." Kong turned his head slowly, eyes sharp despite the pain. "I said no." One of his men leaned in. "Chairman, at least let them stop the bleeding." Kang's grip tightened on the man's sleeve. "Hospitals are graves," he said quietly. "I don't die in graves." A young intern whispered to a nurse, "His blood pressure is dropping." Kong heard it. He smiled faintly. Let it drop. Better that than lying helpless on a table while enemies closed in. A gurney was rolled closer anyway. Kong kicked it away with what strength he had left. The metal clattered loudly against the wall. "No needles," he growled. "No machines. No questions." The corridor went silent except for the rapid beeping of a heart monitor someone had foolishly tried to attach to him. Then, from the far end of the hallway, a quiet voice spoke. "Sir, you need to sit down." Kong turned. She wasn't one of the doctors. She wore a nurse's uniform, plain and unremarkable, her dark hair pulled back tightly. She looked young, too young for the tension in her eyes, but she wasn't shaking like the others. Her name badge read, Yoon Cor. One of Kang's men scoffed. "Get out of here." She didn't move. "If you collapse," she said calmly, "you won't get a choice anymore." Kong stared at her. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, perhaps. "Bold," he said. "For someone who doesn't know who I am." "I know exactly who you are," Cor replied. That earned her several raised guns. Kong lifted a hand slightly. "Lower them." His men hesitated, then obeyed. Cor stepped closer. As she did, her eyes dropped briefly to his wrist, just for a second. And she froze. There, half hidden beneath blood and an expensive watch, was a faded tattoo. A crane. Its wings folded downward. Her throat went dry. She had seen that symbol before. Years ago. On her grandfather's arm, back when she was a child and he still came home with bruises he never explained. The memory hit her hard. A dim kitchen. A tired old man washing blood from his hands. A whisper meant for no one. The night crane bows only once. Cor's heart started pounding. Kong shifted his weight, pain flashing across his face. "You're staring," he said. She looked up quickly. "You're bleeding internally. So they tell me. If the bullet fragmented. I didn't come here for a lecture." Cor swallowed. Her instincts screamed at her to step back, to disappear like everyone else. But something deeper pushed her forward. "You don't trust hospitals," she said softly. "Because men like you don't get saved in them. They get finished." The corridor went deadly quiet. One of Kang's men stepped forward angrily. "Watch your mouth." Kong raised his hand again. Slowly. "Continue," he said. Cor's voice lowered. "You think if you lie down, you won't get back up." Kang's eyes locked onto hers. "And you think you can change that?" She hesitated. Then, before fear could stop her, she leaned closer, so close only he could hear. And she whispered the words her grandfather had sworn her never to repeat. "The night crane bows only once." Kong went completely still. The faint smile vanished from his face. His pupils dilated. For a long, terrifying second, Cor thought she had made a terrible mistake. Then Kong inhaled sharply. His hand trembled. "Who taught you that?" he asked, his voice no longer threatening, only stunned. Cor felt her pulse in her ears. "My grandfather." Kong stared at her like he was seeing a ghost. Around them, guns slowly lowered as his men sensed the shift in the air. Kong closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. "Clear the hallway," he said hoarsely. "Everyone out." A doctor protested. "Sir, we need." "I said out." No one argued again. As the corridor emptied and the doors slid shut, Kong turned back to Cor. "If you're lying," he said quietly, "you will not leave this building alive." She met his gaze, heart hammering. "I'm not." For the first time that night, Kong Dae-suk allowed himself to sit. Kang's back hit the wall as he slid down into the chair, his breath hitching despite his effort to control it. Cor moved instinctively, catching his shoulder before he could slump too far. "Don't," one of the men snapped, half a step forward. Kong lifted his hand again. Slower this time. Weaker. "She stays," he said. The men exchanged uneasy glances. They had followed Kong for years. They had watched him execute traitors without blinking. But they had never seen him look at anyone the way he was looking at this nurse now. Cor knelt in front of him. Careful, precise. "I need to see the wound." "You have 60 seconds, Kong replied. "Then you step back." She didn't argue. She carefully pulled his blood-soaked jacket aside, fingers steady even as fresh blood welled up. Her breath caught despite herself. The bullet had entered cleanly, but the swelling told her everything. "You're bleeding inside," she said. "A lot." Kong chuckled weakly. "You already said that. If we don't stabilize you, you'll collapse," she said. "And if you collapse, your men will panic." One of the men bristled. "We don't panic." Cor didn't look at him. "Everyone panics when their leader bleeds." The silence that followed was sharp. Kong studied her face. "You speak like someone who's seen this before." "My grandfather," she said without thinking. His eyes narrowed. "Tell me about him." She hesitated. "He died when I was in university. He worked nights. Always came home late. Always tired." "And the crane?" Kong asked quietly. Cor swallowed. "I didn't know what it meant. He told me it was a reminder." "A reminder of what?" "That some debts are heavier than life." Kong closed his eyes. His breathing grew uneven. "You shouldn't have said the words," he murmured. "Why?" "Because they don't get spoken lightly," he said. "Not unless someone is ready to inherit the consequences." Before Cor could respond, a sharp crack echoed from somewhere below. Gunfire. Not close yet, but close enough. One of Kang's men pressed a finger to his earpiece. "Chairman, we have movement." Black vans just pulled into the south parking lot. Sioa's heart slammed against her ribs. What does that mean? Kang's jaw tightened. It means they followed us. Another crack echoed, louder this time. Kong looked at Su. You should leave. Now. She shook her head without thinking. If I leave, you bleed out. That's not your problem. It became my problem when you told everyone to leave. Another man spoke urgently. Chairman, we need to move you. Now. This place isn't secure. Kong laughed quietly. It was never secure. Sioa stood. I need supplies. You don't get to make demands, one man snapped. Kong turned his head sharply. She does. The man stiffened. Chairman. She speaks under my protection, Kong said. Anyone who interferes answers to me. The message was clear. Sio moved quickly, grabbing gauze, saline, gloves. Her hands trembled now, but she forced them still. What are you doing? Kong asked. Buying time, she replied. If the bullet nicked an artery. It didn't, Kong said. She paused. How do you know? Because I wouldn't be talking. Despite herself, Seo let out a short breath that might have been a laugh. Another gunshot echoed, closer now. Screams followed. Cor flinched. They're coming inside. Kong nodded slowly. They'll test security first. Then they'll cut the power. Almost on cue, the lights flickered. Cor looked at him. You sound very sure. I've been hunted longer than you've been alive, he said. Men like me don't get attacked unless someone is certain. Her voice dropped. Who wants you dead that badly? Kong met her gaze. Someone who thinks tonight is his only chance. The lights flickered again. A doctor's voice screamed somewhere down the hall, followed by the unmistakable sound of running footsteps. One of Kang's men drew his gun fully now. Chairman, permission to secure the floor. Do it, Kong said. Quietly. The man nodded and disappeared down the corridor with two others. Seo pressed fresh gauze to Kang's side. Blood soaked through almost instantly. Her chest tightened. This isn't holding. Kong hissed as pain shot through him. Then stop the bleeding. I can't without surgery. Then don't stop, he said simply. Slow it. She looked at him sharply. You're talking like you expect to die. I talk like someone who's prepared. She shook her head. My grandfather used to talk like that. Kang's eyes flicked back to her. And what happened to him? He lived, she said softly. Longer than he expected. Another pause. Kong exhaled slowly. Then perhaps, history is repeating itself. A man burst back into the hallway. Chairman. We've lost the south stairwell. They're moving up. Ciora's stomach dropped. You said they'd cut the power. As if summoned by her words, the lights died completely. Emergency lighting kicked in seconds later, bathing the corridor in red. Monitors beeped wildly. Somewhere nearby, glass shattered. Kang's men formed a tight circle around him and so Kong looked down at her. You're still here. She met his gaze. I told you. I finish what I start. For the first time that night, something in Kang's expression softened. Listen carefully, he said. If things go wrong. They won't. If they do, he continued, ignoring her. You run. Don't look back. Don't hesitate. And you. He smiled faintly. I'll do what I've always done. Cioa tightened her grip on the gauze. Survive. Another explosion echoed from below. Dust drifted from the ceiling. One of the men swore under his breath. They're not just here to kill you, he said. They're here to make a statement. Cioa looked between them. What happens to witnesses? Kong met her eyes. Usually. She didn't blink. And tonight. He leaned closer, his voice low, intense. Tonight, anyone who stands beside me is untouchable. She nodded once. Good, Kong said. Because from this moment on, you are standing beside me. And as the sound of approaching footsteps thundered closer, Seo realized something terrifying. The words she had whispered hadn't just saved his life. They had bound hers to it. The first body hit the floor at the far end of the corridor with a dull, wet thud. Seo flinched, but she didn't scream. Gunfire erupted immediately after short, controlled bursts that echoed violently through the hospital wing. Kang's men returned fire without hesitation, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. Down! Someone shouted. Seo ducked instinctively as Kang's chair was dragged backward, shielded by two men who moved like they had rehearsed this exact moment 1,000 times. Kong gritted his teeth as pain ripped through his side. Don't move me too fast, he snapped. One of the men glanced at him. Chairman, they're coming through the stairwell. How many? Kong asked. Too many. Seo pressed herself against the wall, heart pounding so hard she thought she might black out. She had treated stabbing victims, crash victims, even gunshot wounds before, but never like this. Never with bullets flying this close. She looked at Kong. You're losing consciousness. I'm listening, he replied. That's not the same thing. A sharp laugh escaped him despite the chaos. You sound like him. Her head snapped up. My grandfather? Kong nodded faintly. He talked the same way. Calm. Annoyingly calm. Another explosion rocked the floor below. The lights flickered again, then stabilized. One of the men leaned close to Kong. Chairman, they've blocked the elevators. We can't move you. Kang's gaze hardened. Then we hold. Seoa shook her head. You can't stay here. Kong looked at her sharply. You think I don't know that? Then why are you acting like you're already dead? That stopped him. For a brief moment, the gunfire faded into the background, replaced by something heavier. Because men like me, Kong said quietly, don't get endings. We get interruptions. Seoa didn't reply. She reached for fresh gauze, hands moving faster now, urgency overriding fear. You said my grandfather saved you, she said. When? Kong exhaled slowly. 32 years ago. During the crane night. Her breath caught. The syndicate purge? You know of it. My grandfather never talked about it, she said. But people whispered. Kang's eyes darkened. They slaughtered anyone connected to the old families. No warnings. No mercy. A bullet slammed into the wall inches from Seoa's head. She ducked instinctively. Kang's voice didn't waver. I was supposed to die that night. Another shot rang out. He found me under a collapsed beam, Kong continued. I was bleeding out. Couldn't move. Could barely breathe. Seo pressed hard against the wound as another wave of blood soaked through. What did he do? He dragged me, Kong said. Out of fire. Out of smoke. While men hunted us. Her voice trembled despite her effort. Why? Because I bowed, Kong replied. I didn't know it then. But I bowed first. A scream echoed from somewhere down the hall. One of Kang's men cursed. They breached the west wing. Seoa's eyes darted around. We need to move him. Somewhere safer. There is no safer, one man replied grimly. Kong looked at Seo. Tell me something. She looked back. What? Did your grandfather ever regret it? She hesitated, then shook her head. No. He said some choices define who you are forever. Kong closed his eyes briefly. He said the same thing to me. Gunfire intensified. Footsteps pounded closer. One of the men shouted, Chairman, we're outnumbered. Kang's eyes snapped open. Then we change the numbers. He turned his head slightly. Call the North team. The man hesitated. Sir, they're not close enough. Call them anyway. The man obeyed, barking into his radio. Seo leaned closer to Kong. You're stalling. I'm buying time, he corrected. Just like you. She swallowed. If you pass out, I can't help you. Kong smirked faintly. Then don't let me. Another body fell. Blood smeared across the tiles. Sioa's hands shook harder now. She took a breath, forcing herself to focus. Listen to me, she said. When the bleeding slows, I need to compress here. If I don't. I know, Kong said. Do it. Her eyes flicked to his. You trust me. He didn't answer immediately. Then he said, with my life. The words landed heavily between them. A sudden lull fell over the corridor. The gunfire stopped. The silence was worse. One of the men whispered, they're regrouping. Sioara's skin prickled. That's bad, isn't it? Kong nodded. Very. A voice echoed from the stairwell. Amplified, confident. Kong Dae-suk, it called. Come out. Let's end this cleanly. Sioar stiffened. They know your name. They always do, Kong replied. The voice continued, closer now. You're bleeding. You're trapped. And your men are dying for nothing. Sioar felt her throat tighten. Ignore him. Kong didn't respond. Instead, he spoke quietly to Sioar. If I give an order, you follow it. No hesitation. She shook her head. I'm not one of your men. No, he said. You're more important. Before she could respond, Kong raised his voice. You want me, he called out. Then come take me. The footsteps resumed immediately. Fast, aggressive. Sioar grabbed his arm. What are you doing? Ending it, he said. One way or another. Her voice broke. You promised my grandfather. That stopped him. For a split second, everything froze again. Kong looked at her. Really looked at her. Then he nodded once. Then we survive. A distant explosion thundered through the building. One of the men shouted, laughing in disbelief. North team just arrived. Gunfire erupted again, this time from behind the attackers. Chaos exploded in the hallway. So pressed down hard, ignoring the pain in her hands, the blood soaking her sleeves. Kong gasped, but stayed conscious. Stay with me, she said urgently. I'm here, he replied. I'm not done yet. As the corridor filled with smoke and screams, Seo realized something else, something that terrified her more than the guns. If Kong survived this night, nothing would ever be the same again. The gunfire didn't stop all at once. It faded unevenly, first the sharp cracks, then the echoing shouts, then the sound of boots retreating down the stairwell. Smoke hung in the air, thick and bitter, stinging Seora's eyes as she pressed her weight harder against Kang's wound. His breathing was ragged now. Too ragged. Kong, she said sharply. Stay with me. His lips twitched. You're using my name. She didn't deny it. Don't close your eyes. I'm not, he said, though his eyelids fluttered. One of his men rushed forward. Blood smeared across his cheek. Chairman, the floor is secure. For now. For now, Kong echoed faintly. Seo felt warmth spread beneath her palms again. Her heart dropped. No, 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 no. She grabbed fresh gauze, pressing harder than before. Kong sucked in a breath through clenched teeth. Hurts? She asked. Everything hurts, he replied. You're doing fine. That's not reassuring. A weak chuckle escaped him. It's honest. She leaned closer. You're crashing. I need permission to sedate you. No, he said instantly. Kong. If I sleep, he interrupted, I won't wake up. She swallowed hard. You don't know that. I do. Footsteps approached again, but slower this time. One of the doctors peeked around the corner, pale and shaken. Chairman, we can prepare an operating room. Kong looked at Seo. She met his gaze. He needs surgery. Silence stretched. Then Kong shook his head. Not yet. The doctor stared at him. Sir, you don't have time. Kang's voice hardened despite the weakness. I didn't survive tonight to die under fluorescent lights. Cor felt anger flare. You don't get to decide that alone. That earned her several startled looks. Kong turned to her slowly. Explain. If you die, she said, everyone who protected you tonight dies with you. Your men. The doctors. Me. His jaw tightened. You owe my grandfather, she continued. And you said blood debts are honored. Kong studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Prepare the room. Relief hit her so hard her knees nearly buckled. As they wheeled him toward surgery, Cor walked beside him, refusing to let go of his hand. His grip tightened around her fingers unexpectedly. You're shaking, he murmured. So are you, she shot back. That's blood loss. Mine is fear. He looked at her. Good. It means you still know what you're risking. They reached the operating room doors. Kong stopped them with a slight gesture. One moment. The staff froze. He turned his head toward Cor. If I don't come out of this. She shook her head fiercely. You will. If I don't, he repeated calmly, my men will escort you somewhere safe. You will never be touched. Her throat tightened. And if you do? A faint smile appeared. Then the debt continues. The doors closed behind him. Cor stood there, blood drying on her sleeves, heart pounding as the weight of the night finally crashed down on her. For the first time since the shooting began, the silence felt unbearable. Hours passed. She paced. She scrubbed blood from her hands that wouldn't come off. She replayed every word, every decision, every second she might have acted faster. Finally, the doors opened. A surgeon stepped out, exhaustion written across his face. He's alive, he said. Barely. But alive. Cor's legs gave out beneath her. She sat on the floor, pressing her palms to her face as a sob tore out of her before she could stop it. Later, much later, Kong woke up. The room was dim. Quiet. Machines hummed softly around him. Cor sat beside the bed, eyes closed, her head resting against the railing. She stirred when he shifted. You're awake, she said quickly, standing. So are you, he replied. She tried to smile. It came out crooked. You scared everyone. That was not my intention. She crossed her arms. You're lying. He studied her. You stayed. I told you, she said. I finish what I start. He nodded slowly. My grandfather said that too. She froze. You knew him. Yes, Kong said. Longer than you think. She sat back down. Then tell me who he really was. Kong exhaled. He was a man who chose mercy when power would have been easier. Her eyes burned. Why didn't he ever tell me? Because that life has a way of following you, Kong replied. He wanted you free of it. A pause. But now, he added quietly, it has found you anyway. Cor's voice dropped. What happens to me now? Kong looked at her seriously. That depends on you. She frowned. On me. I can protect you, he said. Erase debts. Open doors. Close threats. And the cost. He didn't answer immediately. Standing beside me, he said finally, means standing in shadow. She stared at him. And if I don't want that? Then I will still honor the debt, he said. From a distance. Another pause stretched between them. Cor took a slow breath. I don't want your power. Kong nodded. Good. I want one thing. What? The truth, she said. No more codes. No more whispers. I want to know what my grandfather died protecting. Kong leaned back against the pillow, eyes dark, thoughtful. Then, he said, you need to understand what happens when a crane bows. She leaned forward, heart pounding. Tell me. And Kong Dae-suk began to speak. Kang's voice was quiet, but every word landed heavy. When a crane bows, he said, it means a man acknowledges that his life no longer belongs to him alone. Sioa didn't interrupt. It is not submission, Kong continued. It is responsibility. The old syndicates believed power without restraint destroyed everything it touched. So they created rules, codes, ways to bind monsters to mercy. Sioa swallowed. My grandfather was one of them. He was more than that, Kong said. He was a keeper. She frowned. A keeper of what? Balance, Kong replied. When violence became necessary, he ensured it ended. When men like me lost ourselves, he reminded us what it cost. Her chest tightened. And the sentence? The night crane bows only once, Kong said. It means the debt can never be transferred. Only fulfilled. Sioa looked down at her hands. Then why did he teach it to me? Kang's gaze softened. Because he knew one day, you might need protection he could no longer give. Silence filled the room again. Sioa finally spoke. And now, Kong said, the debt has passed to me. Days later, Kong was moved to a private recovery suite. The hospital returned to normal, though whispers lingered in every corridor. Official reports called it a violent gang incident. No names were released. No explanations offered. Sioa returned to work, but nothing felt the same. She noticed the black cars parked across the street when her shifts ended. She noticed how strangers looked away too quickly. How problems she had carried for years, debts, threats, quiet struggles, simply disappeared. One evening, Kong sent for her. She found him standing by the window, fully dressed now, the faintest limp in his step. You're leaving, she said. Yes, he replied. Seoul has become too small. She nodded. What happens to your empire? It's already dissolving, Kong said. Power like mine attracts war. I won't let it touch you. She turned to face him. You don't have to disappear because of me. I know, he said. But I choose to. She studied him carefully. Is this what my grandfather wanted? Kong met her gaze. He wanted the cycle to end. Outside, engines started. Low, controlled, final. Sioa took a breath. Then this is goodbye. For now, Kong said. She hesitated. If I ever speak the words again. You won't need to, he said gently. The debt is complete. She nodded, emotions tight in her chest. Take care of yourself. Kong smiled faintly. You already did. That night, 5 black cars left the city. And the crane disappeared from the underworld. Years passed. Sioa became a senior nurse. Then a supervisor. She trained others to stay calm in chaos, to choose people over fear. She never spoke of that night, but sometimes, when patients clung to life, she felt her grandfather's presence beside her, watching, approving. One evening, long after she thought the past had finally settled, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside was a single line. The crane has bowed. Sioa closed her eyes. She folded the paper carefully and slipped it into her pocket. Then she went back to work. Saving lives. And somewhere far away, a man who had once ruled through fear finally slept without guards, without weapons, without enemies. Free. If this story held you until the very end, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Stories like this live and grow through your support, and there are many more secrets waiting inside the vault. Because some codes are never written. They are remembered. And some debts change everything.